There's a bunch of new smart home products and devices coming to the market before the holidays that promise to be easier to install and maintain, unlike smart home products of the past. On this episode, we're going to talk about the Matter protocol and why it might get us closer to having an automated home. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me in studio today is Skip Ashton. He is a distinguished engineer with Infineon Technologies and a member of the Connectivity Standards Alliance. Welcome, Skip.
Great to be here, Keith.
All right, so tell me about sort of, before we get into the whole Matter protocol, because I do want to talk about a lot of that, but you and I have sort of some shared history in terms of the problems of the whole smart home space. So I think we want to trade some horror stories about how bad it was, because obviously there was the protocols called like Zigbee and Z-Wave and all sorts of X10, I believe one of them was. Yeah. So you've been through all of this, so you understand sort of.
Anybody who's been working on this for any period of time has been through a lot of changes. I never tried the X10. That looked too painful to start. But, I was involved in Zigbee in the early days and had a lot of customers, right? Zigbee customers. And so they would give me their smart home stuff and I would install it. And then I'd go on a trip somewhere and my wife would call and say, why don't the lights work? And I'd say, that's a feature. Yeah, you need to stand on your left foot and install this app and then the lights will work.
So give me sort of the history of sort of the smart home space. Like, if you can condense it down, obviously we don't have we don't have to go through the 20 or 30 or 40 year history of this stuff. But
there's been, a bunch of parallel tracks going on and fragmented ecosystems, right? So there was the X10 and kind of the real, I would really call it hobbyist stuff, and Insteon was involved also. And then Zigbee got started, and really in 2009, 2010, Zigbee really started getting a decent footprint. It started, earlier than that, 2001, 2002. It didn't get a decent footprint for 10 years.
Right.
And Z-Wave started a similar time, actually, and is still going in a parallel track, different protocol, different devices, and those sorts of things, thereby leading to the exact problem we have in the smart home, which has been this massive fragmentation throughout the years. And then, as it got along and got some traction, the ecosystems that we think of today, Apple HomeKit and Google, buying Nest and starting Google Home really and having their products. Amazon got involved when Alexa came out and starting adding home connectivity to Alexa as skills and things like that, thereby really completing the fragmentation, and then you had lots of little guys that started and offered, full service gateways that offered all these protocols. And then you'd see the news articles when their servers shut down 3 years later because they didn't have enough business.
Right.
And your devices would stop working because that server got shut down somewhere. And consumers then started to understand this different model of, wait, I bought something that I think I own and is in my house, and it stopped working because you shut a server down somewhere. We don't think of ownership that way.
Right.
And so we were kind of left with this mess, which left consumers not picking it up. And so what you saw is very piecemeal adoption, right? I want a smart lock, so I'm going to put a smart lock in. What's the best one? I'll do that. Well, what ecosystem is it? The truth is, consumers don't think by ecosystem. They think, what's the best thing I want to put in my house? But they needed to think of it, how do I connect it, right? And so you ended up with a lot of piecemeal that I think, we all went through, which is how many apps can I put on my phone for different things? So I have an app for my smart lock, and I have one for my lights, and I have one for my garage door openers, and good, my security system can have a different one. So pretty soon you end up with all these apps on your phone, which is a mess.
Right.
And so Google Home wanted to fix that, HomeKit wanted to fix that, Amazon wanted to, fix that. But the truth is they all had trouble, right? They all had trouble fixing it because the home is what I call this supremely complex environment, which we don't think of it that way, but, your appliances are not from the same manufacturer.
Right.
They may have been when you bought your home if it was a new home, but probably not.
Yeah.
Your light bulbs, there's like no chance, right? Your light bulbs are from the same manufacturers.
Right.
Your light switches, your thermostats, your door locks. So the home has many, many different manufacturers' products in it. So getting all those guys aligned is really hard to do things. And so as Apple came out with a protocol and Google had their own protocol and Amazon was really using Zigbee 3, the device makers are like, really? How many of these am I going to make?
Was there an assumption on the part of Amazon and Google and some of these ones that were coming out with these sort of HomeKit or HomePods or whatever we want to call them? Was there an assumption that consumers were just going to go out and buy one vendor and then everything will then eventually hook up.
I think the
And they didn't
normal
realize
assumption-
that people don't do that anymore?
Yeah, I think their normal assumption is my brand is strong enough, so you're going to have to look for works with HomeKit,
Yeah.
works with Google, works with Alexa. And the problem is consumers, it's hard to train them on that. And when I bring it home and it doesn't work or it's kind of flaky, then I just take it back to the store.
Yeah.
And we know how much these device makers love returns. And for the device makers, so it's a nightmare for consumers, but it's also a nice nightmare for the device makers, right? You're trying to buy a smart lock, you go to the store, you pick my smart lock, you bring it home, and then it didn't work.
Right.
Because of what controller, what ecosystem you were using, and now you return my smart lock and say, wow, that device maker really stinks. Well, no, my lock was fine.
Right,
You
right.
just got the wrong version of it, and I've got to maintain all these different versions, so that's a real nightmare.
Here's my horror story, and this is just quickly. I was trying to figure out in my own house what devices I already have, and I'm just gonna. So I've got a bunch. I've got a bunch of cameras and computers and printers and light switches and things like that. We have 2 cameras. We have one on the doorbell,
Yep.
which is probably the
Yeah.
leader, and then but then my wife went out and bought an outdoor camera that she wanted to sort of monitor another part of the home.
That's right.
More of the driveway, because
Yeah.
we weren't getting the notifications, because you would only get the notifications if people come up to the door.
Yeah.
But she wanted to see people that were pulling into the driveway or just sort
Absolutely.
of bothering our dogs. And so she bought a second camera.
Yes.
And so we installed the camera, and it has a separate app. So now it doesn't have the same app
Yes.
that I have from the other one. And then the second problem is that because she set up the account, she wants to share she can share the feed,
Yes.
and I can see the camera, but I don't get the alerts.
Yes.
The alerts only go to the main account holder.
Yes.
And I just threw up my hands and I'm like, okay, this is not how it
Yes.
should work.
That's right.
This camera should talk to a centralized hub of some sort.
Yes.
Or centralized thing.
You would think
and it's
so.
not.
Yeah.
And so that's why I threw, and then you start thinking about all the other things. It's the installation, it's the apps, it's the having 6 different accounts to try to talk to
Yes.
each other. All right. So this has now led to the creation of this whole problem that led to the creation of Matter, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
And it took a long time to get there, right? And I think it took those large ecosystems to recognize we can't influence all of these individual device makers to do things our way.
Okay.
We have to do this collectively so that we solve the problem for device makers, but we'll also solve the problem for consumers. Right now, if I buy it, it's going to work. And it's going to work if I have Apple in my home, if I have, Google Home, if I use Alexa, if I've got a Samsung SmartThings, hub, they're all going to work the same way.
Right.
So I can go buy a product, you can bring it home, it's going to work. You can share it with your family members, even if they use a different ecosystem.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, who'd have thought?
What sort of led to this creation? Was it finally someone just took a frying pan and hit the device makers on the head with it and go, all right, shape up, guys. You're not going to have a market if you guys keep acting this way.
I mean, I think they recognized that the smart home market, realistically, it had stalled, right? We had a certain level of penetration, right, of video doorbells have been pretty successful, right? But pretty successful means they're in, I think the last numbers were, 30% of homes, right? Thermostats are less so.
Right.
Smart lighting is less so. So we'd kind of stalled at the implementation of the smart home, whereas smart speakers are in more like 65% of homes, even though they're only 6 years old.
Yeah.
Right? So smart speakers blew by everything else because the use case, the setup, the configuration was seamless and easy, and you didn't have consumers returning to the store saying, why doesn't this work?
Right.
Right? And so I think it was a recognition by those large ecosystems, we can't go this alone. We have some amount of success. I don't think they were complaining about what they were selling, but it wasn't really widespread success. It was limited success. And so they needed to recognize that the only way to do this was to get together and do it, which is not in their nature.
Right.
So, what was the Zigbee Alliance became the Connectivity Standards Alliance to kind of broaden its scope on this and take this on and bring in pieces of HomeKit, pieces of what Google was doing with the Nest products. Amazon was already on Zigbee, so it's got a lot of the Zigbee data model stuff. Bring those groups together with hundreds of device manufacturers and say, okay, we're going to have to beat this out together.
Yeah. Did you guys like lock them in a room with some pizza and then say you're not coming out until we have an agreement?
Well, that was the idea right up until COVID hit, and then we locked them into WebEx, right?
Right. Well,
Let's do all this remotely.
Yeah. So when did the discussions initially take place? Was it pre-COVID?
It was 2019 really kicked it off, right? And like any good standard, everybody said, this will only take us a little while, right? We can do this in a year. I think, realistically, everybody knew it was going to take longer, but you set ambitious goals on it. And then, it really hurt to not be able to do face-to-face meetings. That's very difficult.
Right.
But again, you got to make do with what you can. And so it took, hundreds of companies coming together to put this the right way. It took longer than expected. So, people complained about that. But I think, that's normal. And now, so it was launched last October and really rolled out in November. And we're seeing the real market uptick, I would say, now. Because there's been this kind of phased rollout. The phones got updates, right? Apple and Android, Amazon announced their updates, Samsung had done theirs. So it's much easier to send an update to your phone. We're used to this, right? So, hey, good, new software on my phone, I can support Matter.
Yeah.
Okay, device makers don't move that quickly, right? So the device makers needed to, even though the standard was out, I've got to integrate it into my door lock, I've got to integrate it into my light bulb, go through my own internal testing, get it certified, and then release it in the market. So those things are really starting to hit now.
Okay.
So you can go buy things. They've been slowly hitting, right? CES this year had a lot of stuff to show.
Right.
But that was to show it, and it wasn't really in the market. And now you're really starting to see it. So I think this year you're seeing the real upswing.
Okay. And is it backward compatible with maybe existing things that I already have sort of in my my network?
So different companies are taking different approaches to this, right? So obviously, Zigbee bridging was built into the Matter 1.0 spec. And so you take something like Philips Hue, which has been a wildly successful ecosystem on its own of, lighting products and switches and things. And they're not updating their individual products. Signify made an announcement and said, we're going to put Matter into our bridge and use the Zigbee to Matter bridging functionality. So the lights show up, they look like Matter devices, but they're behind a bridge. As a consumer, you don't really know the difference. You just turn them on and off the same way you would, but they show up in your home app, right? They show up in your Google Home, wherever you're using your Matter app, they show up. So from a consumer standpoint, that's a real win as opposed to having to open the Philips app.
And do I have to use a hub of sorts? Do I have to
Those old systems have a hub, right?
Yeah,
and so
okay, but I never made it to that next step. I just have a bunch of individual devices.
Yes.
And if I find out that these devices will then support Matter, do I still need to go out and get this, or can this all work without sort of
it depends
a hub?
It depends on what they are, right?
All right.
And so in theory, Matter doesn't require a hub. In practice, what you're seeing is Apple put a lot of their smarts to run Matter down into the HomePod Mini or in their Apple TV update, right? The new Apple TV.
Yeah.
Because it's also got Thread built in there. So Matter's built on Wi-Fi, Thread, and Ethernet are the IP protocols it runs over,
Yeah,
right?
what's Thread? I'm sorry.
Thread is the low-power 15.4 mesh networking that was built that really started, it was launched in 2014, and you've never heard of it because it was used in the Google products, right?
Right.
But it was used widely in the Google products, but not in much else. But it's a low power IPv6 network. So, from the rest of the world, it looks just like an IP packet. So Matter was built on top of that. But that means I need another radio. So I need a hub for that. Right, I'm sub-fashion. It doesn't have to do the translation like my Zigbee to Matter, where I'm doing application level translation. I just do routing with it because it's all IPv6. But again, I need another radio in there.
Yeah.
And so those are getting rolled out into various things. So the Google products have it. So they're Thread routers, border routers, so they can carry it off to Wi-Fi. So if your devices are Wi-Fi, then they're just on Wi-Fi, right? But if they're Thread devices, you need this hub in there. And then the backwards compatibility issue, the Zigbee needs that bridge. And then Z-Wave is the other kind of large installed base out there. And, that was bought by Silicon Labs. And so they've come out with a bridge that takes that over to Matter. So
there was a feeling at one point that sort of the router, the Wi-Fi router would be sort of this sort of hub, but that never really came to be, did it?
Well, if you look at the smart home today, for a lot of people, they put in the mesh Wi-Fi. And so you do have this kind of intelligence built into your Wi-Fi hubs. And the Eero ones have Thread built into them. So those,
And that's owned by Amazon now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
you got to keep track of the musical chairs right?
But trust me, this is going to be exciting stuff, guys.
So it made it, the thing it has done is made it simpler for the device makers and for the consumers at the starting point here. And that was kind of the most critical pain point, right? Device makers don't want to build 5 versions of the same door lock to support 5 different protocols, and consumers don't want to go to the store and ponder which one they needed to buy to connect in their home and why this one doesn't give notifications and that one does, like your problem.
Right. And so this is going to, there will be a Matter, like a sticker or a logo or something that will indicate,
logo. That's right.
That will indicate that this will work with, or hopefully will work.
Of course, we got to have the branding, right?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Oh, you got something.
You mean like this Matter branding?
Yeah. Okay. So good.
Yeah.
That's a good step.
Yeah. So that's,
otherwise you would have. Yeah.
Yeah. So Eve's a good example, right? And it's an open box here because it's set up in my house. Sorry.
Okay.
But these guys were really HomeKit based, which meant it didn't work if you had an Android phone.
Right.
And now they support Matter, so you can use whatever you want with it. So, Eve went from being a HomeKit, Apple only kind of company with their products to now they support anything. So they're an early adopter. They're one of the first guys you can go buy it, and it's got the logo on there. But of course, this is thread based.
Okay.
Which meant I couldn't use that without
buying a hub, right?
So I had to go get my hub.
Okay.
Right. So I got the Apple TV latest hub.
Okay.
I needed a refresh anyways, and I wanted to get Thread somewhere in there. And that doesn't have the Matter logo on it, but it's got Matter inside.
Okay.
Because it's got Thread inside.
All right.
So that's the hub that ends up in my house.
Okay. And so I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about sort of the vision of what Matter is, or what Matter can do.
Yeah.
I think what you hear about in the smart home space is everyone thinks, okay, Iron Man, Tony Stark comes home, he's got Jarvis, he goes lights on, refrigerator open,
yes, that's right.
or you hear about the internet connected refrigerator and it's like, okay, you're out of milk and all this sort of things sort of mesh. But is that the vision it needs to be, or do you imagine that the vision message and the marketing is going to get a lot better than it used to be?
There's a lot of people that have different visions. And so Matter started to resolve this fundamental ecosystem clash, right? That was the real thing that we've solved in step 1. And it's not done, don't get me wrong, because we've gone after the low-hanging fruit with the first release, and we've got new devices coming because there's so many device types in the home. So light bulbs and door locks and thermostats are in there. But, the upcoming release has appliances, and we've got to add IP cameras because they're so common.
Right.
So there's always more devices coming. So that solves what I would call the connected home problem.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
I can connect all my devices. You can interact with them without, hopefully going through loads of pain. And when you interact and set them up, the rest of your family can use them. Great. Now you have a connected home. That doesn't make it a smart home yet.
Okay.
Right? And so what's going to make it a smart home is where we go next with it, right? Because, we've got to talk about services in your home and what services are available today. What services would you like to have? The truth is you don't have a lot of services available in your home today, right? When we talk about smart home services, you've got security services. We know there's a bunch of those out there.
Right.
And you've guys got Comcast with their Xfinity Home service, which is really just, here's your smart home devices under one thing. So the ecosystems are all offering this kind of, you can connect all your devices here and we can do things. But the next step is going to be services, right? So do you want energy services in your home? How much would you like to save energy? Do you want to monitor energy? Who's going to offer that service? Well, is that the ecosystem you currently have, or do you want to go to some energy service company on that? That one, may not be clear. Okay, but what about health and wellness and healthcare monitoring? And I've got elderly parents and I want to see how they're doing, and that we may actually want to check in on them and things like that. Well, now we're talking about a service that, is really privacy centric when we're talking about monitoring your elderly parents.
Right.
How's that going to happen? And that may be a different service if it's actually going to be connected up to your doctor. Like, I don't think they should have access to your door lock just because they have access to your home network. So
Right.
you're now talking about how do I segregate my services and offer some services to one thing and some access to another, right? We've talked about, hey, batteries run out on some of my smart home devices. Maybe I could sign up for a battery service, and they show up and say, yeah, here's the, AAAs for your front door lock. Go ahead and put them in now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, to give a company access to the battery level in my front door lock sounds trivial, right? But I don't want to give them access to the door lock.
Right.
I just want to give them access to the battery level.
Yeah.
So they could provide that service to me.
And mail the batteries to you. And then
Mail the batteries to me and charge me for it.
Yeah,
Thank you, right?
yeah.
And so, what are all those services? I don't think we even know today, but we need to make them available, and we need to think about how we segregate data, how a consumer logically says, this data I want to make available to this service. I've signed up for that. Thank you. Please make it available, which really means we're talking about at the edge of the home, right? Because from a privacy and security standpoint, I'd really like this data to mostly stay within my home. So at that edge, who can get access to it? And, how do I enable it safely, securely? And how do I turn that off if I say I'm no longer signing up for that service? I want to switch it over to another service.
Okay.
We're not there yet.
I want to jump back just a little bit because there was a point you made about connected home versus smart home. And so I think there's probably a misconception out there that they're assuming that this will all create a smart home, but that's not the case. It will create a connected home, and then you'll still sort of use an app or some sort of home.
You're still doing that,
and just to check everything.
That's right.
And that's a big step, just even in the first direction.
That's a big step, and we shouldn't underplay that. Right, having all your devices on one network where I can, they can talk to each other. I can set up automations, and I'm not going to some cloud service where things go up there and then come back to my home. I can do it all locally. That in itself is a big deal.
Yeah,
we shouldn't lose sight of that. That's a big first step that we're taking with Matter here, and so this is why. My Apple TV is the hub for that because I can set up routines, I can set up schedules, I can set up, different alerts and things like that. They're going to run locally here.
Yeah.
And so that's a big step. When I think of the smart home, getting from a connected home to the smart home though, we'd like for it to anticipate things and be able to do things where you don't go in and automate and program every step of it.
Okay.
Right? If I unlock my front door and it's dark out, I'd like you to turn on the front hall light, and set the temperature to this or things like that, right? Today, the only way you do that is you program every step of that.
Right. And that's one of those, like, I remember there was a service called If Then,
If
then
this, then that.
If this, then that.
Yeah.
And I looked at that once and I was like, whoa, this is beyond my pay grade in terms of my knowledge.
That's right.
Okay. So let me give you another scenario, which I've seen being used is you have smart blinds. So you have window blinds.
Yep.
And so if your device detects that it's getting too hot inside your house,
that's right.
It'll trigger the smart
first
blinds
step, close the blinds.
To close the blinds and things like that. I've seen scenarios where it's like integrating GPS with your car so that it knows when you're coming home, so that if you are now coming home, turns on the heat, or within a certain mile range, turns on the heat if you were away for the day or for a week.
That's right.
Things like that. Is that a connected home thing, or is that now more moving into the smart home?
The blinds scenario to me is very much a connected home thing.
Okay, because
you're heading towards smart home, right? It's all contained within the home.
And devices talking to other devices.
It's devices talking to each other.
Okay.
And so the normal scenario is it's getting too hot in here. Let's close the blinds. Oh, it's still too hot. Let's turn on the ceiling fan. Okay, that didn't work either. Let's turn on the air conditioner, right?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of increasing my level of complexity and energy consumption as I do that because I didn't want to just kick on the air conditioner when the sun's beating in the windows.
Right.
Right? Well, are you willing to program that, or can I make that smart enough that it does that for you and says, hey, I see in the afternoon when the sun comes in these windows too much, let me do that.
Yeah.
We're not there, right? But yeah, smart blinds are a wonderful use case to help save you on things and to set up movie nights so you can close the windows.
Right. Do you get a sense that a lot of these ideas in the scenarios have to be made by the device makers themselves, or is this more of a job for sort of the CSA or the people or Apple, Google, Amazon, all those people?
I mean, right now that clearly goes up to the ecosystem level, right? And the question becomes, we moved into a standard to free up the device makers so they wouldn't have to make all these different flavors and the consumer can pick and choose. If all of these services that we're talking about that, as I say, I think are going to get provided potentially through many different companies, if those all have to go through your ecosystem on a one-to-one basis, that may limit your ability to then change.
Right.
And more importantly, you get to the advanced use cases, which isn't that advanced, like I'm moving out of my apartment and somebody else is moving in, or I sold my house.
Yeah.
Well, if you go through those scenarios, and trust me, I've looked at it with the rental properties and stuff, is I'm going to turn this over to somebody else. Yeah, it's no big deal. Just recommission all your devices, right? You saved all the initial paperwork, didn't you?
Right.
Right. And does the tenant now believe you don't have creepy access to them, or the people you sold your house to? Those are nightmare scenarios. But the truth is, right, those new people moving in may want a different ecosystem. You may have been on Apple and they want to use Google or something else. How's that work?
Yeah.
Right? And so we have to get to a situation where these services can be provided and moved, not just in the home turnover case, but for an individual consumer, you can move them between without having to call your ecosystem provider, set up some business relationship that way. Because ultimately, this is a consumer to service provider business relationship.
Yeah.
So how does that work, right? So we're not there, right? But that's this kind of edge scenario that I mentioned earlier, where that's got to be clean and easy for people to do.
Yeah, I still want us to talk about the sort of the scenarios, and you brought up sort of the aging in place.
Yes.
It does feel like that's a stronger argument rather than the
Yes.
whole Jarvis, control
Absolutely.
my home thing.
Absolutely.
Can you explain, some of the things that we will be seeing in the future around that?
So there's kind of two ways to look at the health and wellness.
Yeah.
One is just an activity level, right? I think most of us agree that having cameras in the home is kind of creepy. So,
Right.
so mom
You
and
see-
dad probably aren't happy if you put cameras in the home to monitor them.
Yeah.
And the truth is, if you've had any of these services, getting an alert every time somebody walks through is actually too much information for me.
Right.
I don't need an alert of that.
Right.
So if I'm not going to put cameras in every room and occupancy sensors don't really tell me much, then you can use things like, hey, normally at 8 in the morning, mom gets up, opens the refrigerator, breakfast is getting served.
Yep.
She didn't open the refrigerator today.
Yep.
No stove was turned on. Okay, that seems like a problem.
Okay.
Right? Well, how do I get to that level? So Matter can bring all this information together. So I can collect all the information in a standard way and have it all in the edge. Now, how do I take that data and get some smarts on it that I can use intelligently, right? Because if I give you an alert every time mom opens the refrigerator, great. Do you really want, all of those alerts?
Yeah, I don't think mom wants to tell us either.
Yeah, and she doesn't want to tell you either. But what you want is, she hasn't moved out of her bedroom today.
Right.
Okay, that might be useful for you to know. So I
Right.
need to take it up a level of information. And how best am I going to do that? And who do you trust to do that? Well, that depends
And
on
so,
who you
so
are.
it's going to be, that's the level of services that we'll
That's right.
probably be seeing later on. It's not
Yes.
going to be the
It's not there yet.
responsibility of
It's
the
gonna take
device
some
maker.
time. That's not
Yeah.
a device maker. It's that accumulation of data across devices, right? So Matter makes all this data common, makes it standard. We can all get access to it across the home. Now, how do I make it intelligent? What do I do with it?
Okay, so another question in terms of, I've got a lot of I'm an older house.
Yes.
The plugs and the lights are all pre-internet.
Yes.
Because this was,
I'm with you.
This house
too.
was built in the late 80s.
Yes. Me too, but it was 1880s. So
Yeah, so I had a security company come in and they gave me a bunch of sort of cameras and
Yeah.
sensors and all this other stuff. And they tried to install a smart garage door opener.
Yes.
And whatever garage door opener it had, they tried to connect it and it just kept beeping and it wouldn't stop beeping. And they left and it was still not. So I ended up just yanking this thing out.
Yes.
This whatever sensor they
That's
was.
a little microcosm of smart
Oh, it
home
was
right
just
there.
like- and,
yeah.
so now my question is that in order for me to even get to a connected home, am I going to have to go out and upgrade my house, which is talking about electricians and all sorts of other service
hopefully
providers
not,
coming in?
right? What I had to do with my garage door openers,
Yeah.
for example, is the Wi-Fi wouldn't reach them.
Yeah.
And so I had to install the mesh Wi-Fi and realized, what I need is another mesh point by the garage
Yeah.
so that they can connect. That was their fundamental problem. So
I think I'm going to need a
step-
completely new garage door opener at this point.
Well, that might be, depending on the brand and what they support.
Yeah.
And this is part of it, right? Is what do you have and how can it go? And you see that now, right? Some people are offering software updates to Matter, but some of these older devices can't update, right? They don't have the flash base or they don't have the power to run it. And so, then what do you do with it? But, some of them, Yale Lock is offering a plug-in. So you can take out your old Zigbee module and plug in a Matter module on some of these locks and upgrade them that way. But it varies by device maker. What are they doing?
What is the sort of the best-selling device out there, or is there a killer app, so to speak, that will sort of jumpstart this? Now that sort of you've got the base of Matter ready to go, is there what's the next thing that everyone will want to have in their home that's easy to install and
I think
then sort of help your life?
If I look at the smart home numbers from these various analysts and things like that, smart lighting's been big. Smart thermostats, smart doorbells, right? It's kind of some of the big ones. Obviously, robot vacuum cleaners, some of that sort of stuff. But those are less an integrated thing in the smart home, whereas the lighting and the thermostats become an integrated solution if you put them all together. And so if I look at what I have, my garage door openers are interesting to me because did anybody leave the garage doors open?
Right.
I like the smart cameras, right? Is anybody driving up the driveway? I'm with you on that one. And so, putting those all together, right now I'm the guy with the 14 apps, right?
Right. So you just want to get it into one app, right?
Well, getting it into one app, A, solves some headache for me and for the rest of my family.
Yeah.
But B, also means I can now make them work together better, right? Because currently, when I get an alert on a camera, I can't do anything else with it because my camera app is separate from all my other apps. So only by putting that data in a common place can I then say, oh, if I get an alert on this camera, I'd like to do these things, right? I'd like to turn on a light. Okay, if the data is all in the same place, I can do that, right? I can't do that when they're all separate apps and separate data streams.
And that's what Matter is solving.
That's right.
We're hoping.
That's right.
Do you have other devices that you wanted to show? I think you were going to bring
some of the other. We got
what
some
are
of
we
the other
see?
toys, right?
Yeah.
So some of the first lighting. So I talked about Signify taking their Hue stuff.
Okay.
And it's all staying on Zigbee. Signify also has the Wiz brand, which is Wi-Fi based lighting. That's all natively moved to Matter.
Okay.
And so, these were nice and simple, easy to set up, things like that. And so it's nice to do. They've also got smart plugs with that. So I got the Eve plug and I got the Wiz plug so I could put them next to each other and play with them, of course, right? Anybody who's tried to set up all this smart home stuff, you learn. I did this with my lighting when I tried to put a bunch of lighting in. You set them all up on the floor first, rather than climbing up in that ceiling.
Yep.
You set them all up on the floor first and see which ones work best. And then you have your wife come in and look at them to see which ones look the same across the different lights and things like that. And then you figure out which ones are going in the living room and which ones are going in the basement, depending on how they looked. Right?
Right.
So you have to set all this stuff up. At least my experience is you're better off setting all this stuff up and playing with it a bit.
Yeah.
So that you can try the different stuff. And so some of these guys, right, have been some of the early leaders in it. And then the last one was the fun lights that you can play with and turn all the colors, the NanoLeaf stuff.
Wow.
These guys have also been involved in Matter. And so, if you need to set your lights to music or that sort of stuff, or set the mood with your lights, these is hang on the wall.
Are there still the light bulbs that have speakers in them so that you can then connect to sort of your music and it comes out of the lights rather than having
I have not tried that, but I've seen those. Yeah,
I've seen those as well.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm hoping that maybe those will then be integrated into a system.
Yes,
that's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because right now with the lights, it's just either turn on, turn off, right?
Oh, you need some color lights. Oh, these are all color.
So the closest
I got is your circadian rhythm.
The closest we've got is that each kid's room has those LED strips.
Yeah,
and
those are nice.
And one child loves red, and the other one loves blue.
There you go. So you do have the color lights. Yeah,
they do, but that's not integrated into any other system. It's all just the remote control that they have.
Yeah.
And they definitely, if they're not listening to music and they don't care, because they all got headphones.
You got to get an upgrade. Yeah. But the music can sync to that, and the lights will be beating to the music.
Yeah,
and changing colors.
All right. So
you got to get an upgrade. That's clear. You don't need to upgrade your house. You just need to upgrade the devices.
Well, that's what I'm hoping is that again, I could see the plugs. Obviously,
yes.
I saw some. I think we had some Amazon Wi-Fi plugs at some point, and you could just plug it in, and then. But then you had to use, I think, the Alexa app in order to, and I was like, okay, now that's another app, and that's another sort of integration.
But it allowed you the voice control, right? at least,
Sort of, yeah.
if you wanted to use that.
I just want, you know what I want? I just want a system that can detect when my teenagers leave a room and the lights go out. Because that's the complaint of every dad.
Yes.
Since my dad
Yes.
was like, oh my God,
That's right.
were you, or were you raised in a barn, shut the refrigerator door?
That's
or,
right.
How much money you're wasting on electricity because these kids leave a room and they don't turn a light off.
But once you put LED lights in, it doesn't matter anymore.
Oh,
But
yeah,
if you put them in with a motion sensor, then they'll turn off for you.
Right. Or is there some sort of presence thing? It's just going to
the
be
motion
motion
sensor.
detection.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
going to be it. I wanted to quickly talk about security and privacy.
Yes.
Are those concerns that you're hearing from consumers, or is
so-
it more from a device maker that they're concerned about it too?
This is, when you look at the surveys and stuff, consumers are concerned about it.
Yeah.
And this is something Matter took very seriously. If you think of the companies involved, they generally care deeply about security and privacy. And so Matter was built from the ground up. There's been a lot of best practices around IoT. And what Matter did was said, yeah, those are great best practices. We're going to take them all and we're going to make them requirements. So, over-the-air software updates, must do it. You can't talk about having a secure device without being able to do over-the-air software updates. It's a signed image from the manufacturer. The device validates it's signed from the manufacturer when it gets it. And the beauty of Matter is those software updates get pushed. There's a distributed compliance ledger, so every time a new device gets certified, it gets put in this. So my phone can check and say, oh, you installed this light. It's not up to date. You're used to this, as you said, you open your kid's PC and it asks for, a bunch of software updates.
Yeah.
Good news, your lighting can do that now.
Right.
Your door lock, they can get those software updates. And so I'm seeing that with my devices already as I start playing with these Matter devices. They're got built 3-6 months ago. They hit my house and say, hey, I got a new software update for you. And I say, yeah, go ahead and install it, which is great. So mandatory software updates. The device has an identity baked into it from the manufacturer, so I can check that it's from that manufacturer. It's been certified and things like that. Everything's encrypted. So it's kind of the latest and greatest. We can never say security's enough. We can never say privacy's enough because you're one bug away from the fix. But so far, so good. It's been, Matter has really set a bar here for wrapping together all of these kind of things that we knew we should be doing and saying, no, you're going to do them now on these IoT devices.
Okay, I want to steal a term from the industrial space.
Yep.
In terms of whenever new technology was coming in, they would always tell me there would be a difference between brownfield and greenfield. And so
Yes.
for the brownfield meaning it's an existing infrastructure
Yes, that's
and
right.
you're adding new stuff to it. So you're adding stuff to either stuff you have before.
Yes.
Greenfield means you don't have any of this stuff.
Yep.
And now you want to sort of take that first step.
That's right.
Does Matter lean one way or the other to sort of the brownfield greenfield, or is it's equally as good for everybody?
It's equally as good because what
knew you were
happened
gonna
is,
say that.
well, what's happened is your phone's gotten updated.
Yeah.
So my argument to people when I talk about this is you have Matter support in your hands
Okay.
and you don't know it, right? Because your phone got an update, your Alexa got an update, right? So you have Matter support in those devices and you don't know it. So if you bring a Matter device home, it's going to speak Matter to that device. Now, if you have existing legacy devices, that device maker, like the Philips Hue I talked about, they've made a choice to update it through their bridge. And so you don't know it, and now that supports Matter, right? So if you decide to switch over, fine, doesn't matter, you can use it, right? If you decide to keep using it the way it is through the Philips app, that's fine too.
Okay.
And so you've got these ecosystems to do it. So I started playing with Home Assistant, which is an open source ecosystem, rather than be tied to one of them, right? And so you throw it on a Raspberry Pi and,
Okay, you just lost me there with the Raspberry Pi.
No, it's not hard. You can actually buy a Raspberry Pi from them and just plug it in with everything preloaded on it. It does a great job discovering all the devices in your home. So I had all these plugged in and it just went out and found them all and said, what would you like to do with them? So it's got a nice dashboard of everything in my house. It pulled in all the rooms they were assigned to because all that information's out there in the network. Pulled all that information in. And now it's an open source, so I'm not tied to one of the big ecosystems. It's an open source version of it that I can decide what to do with, and it's running locally in my house, so it's not up in the cloud.
Okay, but you're at a different level, I think. than
No,
some of these
no,
other-
no.
All right, so if you're all right, so let's say you're in a greenfield situation, but and somehow this conversation
Yep.
has excited enough people
Yeah.
to look into the products.
That's
what
right.
would be the best first step if if they're going to go to I'll just say Best Buy, if they're going to walk into
Sure.
a store, you don't want to overwhelm them with here are the 12 things you need in order to sort of start experiencing. Should you just look for that Matter logo?
You should look for the Matter
and
logo.
then what
right? 'Cause
device would you start with? Just a light
Well,
bulb?
this is the thing about the smart home. Everybody starts with the devices of interest to them.
Okay.
Right. So is a smart door lock of interest because you want to let people into your home when you're away or things like that? Is a thermostat of interest to you? Everybody starts with a different device.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, if you're looking at devices nowadays, you should be looking for the Matter logo because now even if you don't have a big network, I'm starting with one device. As it grows and expands, I know I future-proofed it with that. I know I can do software updates with it. I know it works with all these different ecosystems, so I don't have to worry about getting myself into a legacy situation with it.
Yeah, so that actually brought up another question. Is there a chance at all that there will be another competing standard, or this is it? Like we're now on that right path to connectivity, or are there any sort of outliers and holdovers?
I find it hard to believe, given the literally hundreds and hundreds of companies that are involved in Matter and more getting involved. There's still more people joining, more companies joining. I find it hard to believe some other competing standard is going to be able to get that critical mass.
Right.
Right. Because we've got the big ecosystems. I mean, let's face it, right? You're talking
Apple,
to somebody and they have
Apple,
a smartphone.
You have Apple, you have Google, you have Amazon.
That's right.
Okay.
And then Samsung is putting it in all their smart TVs. LG's putting it in their smart TVs. So this is my point of, you don't know it. You went out and bought a new Samsung TV, and it will support Matter.
Okay.
Right. So you can now see your Matter devices on your TV. You didn't do anything. It just became available.
Yeah.
to
What is what's the TV benefit of? Like what do you get out of the TV?
Well,
just basically you'll get to see everything on the
Yeah,
screen.
you can pull up that kind of dashboard. I'm looking at through my Home Assistant. I can pull that up on my TV, and now I've got all my devices. I can control them there. Now, whether people want to do that or not, Samsung and LG got to figure that out with their TVs. But you also, Matter's got built into it, volume control, channel control, TV control, so I can cast things to it and things like that. So, adding that kind of media player is in Matter, so I can move things around in my home.
What's the best way for consumers to check to see if their equipment is sort of Matter, if it's been updated, or how to update? Is it going to be one or the other?
Yeah, if you're buying stuff, you got to look for the logo at this point.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to upgrade something, you got to look at the manufacturer individually because they're all at their own schedule, and that's too painful for consumers, right? So the truth is, unless you want to get down and dirty with it, you want to just look for the logo.
Okay, so it's either, but for the existing equipment, it's look at their vendor website, or because I'm not, especially
we know how much people love that
on the TVs, just trying to find information on a TV itself.
That's right, and these Wiz ones didn't have the logo, but I had checked their website and it said, "Hey, the new stuff supports it."
Okay.
Because
they've got supply chain problem.
Absolutely, right?
This probably came out before they were.
Yeah, and so I installed that. I installed that using their app. And then went to install it with Matter. It gave me a QR code so I could scan it and add it to my Matter. So now it showed up there instead of just in the Wiz app. But again, I took the leap of faith buying it without the logo on it, that their website was correct and that I'd get a up-to-date one. And so that was the trick,
That's a pretty big leap of faith.
Hey, it worked. It worked. Yeah.
Okay. And so I think what I want to do is I want to have you back in about 6 months, or maybe like next year, or maybe in the January timeframe, and we'll discuss how the holidays went and see how things are going with you.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Skip, for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Keith.
All right, that's all the time we have for the show today. Be sure to subscribe to the website and like it, add any comments, and join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.